Morning here in Salt Lake, and it's not too bad. It's like 7:30 in the morning. Right across the street is Post, where we went quite a few times. Today we're delivering at HD Supply, but the reason why I want to do this video is because I want to talk a little bit about this truck. Let me show you. This truck, it's got great horsepower. It's got a lot of power. And it's a good looking truck. However, there's three things that make it so I don't like it. And makes it so I don't want to be in it. Well, you're asking, why am I in it? So, truck's getting some drive tires put on, and it had kind of a vibration going on, and I think when I bought a used tire out on the road, I think it just threw the axle off or something, or was unbalanced, or I don't know, but I want to say as soon as I got that tire it just started having a bad vibration, and sometimes it'd shake really bad. So they decided to put all new tires on it, and we'll see if that helps. So that's why I'm in this truck. And first thing, number one, is there's no fridge in it. It was taken out, and there's a nice big inverter put in there, but no fridge. So when I was driving it, I had to buy a little fridge, but it holds like a 6-pack of pop. And not much room to put your lunch stuff, like sandwich stuff, you know, your mustard, mayo, lunch meat, cheese, things like that, and a few drinks. Sometimes I could put a couple pops in there and then put that stuff in there to fill up the rest of the space, but there was no room for anything else at all. And when I bought it, I thought it would be a little bit bigger than it was, but ended up being just a little thing, which was fine. It worked for the time. Second thing I don't like about this truck, and as we get to number 3, number 3 is like the ultimate you know, no. But number two is the sensors on this truck. If any of you drove a truck, newer truck, and they have lane sensors, so like if you start to drift off your lane, it'll beep. Those ain't so bad. However, the cruise control, you know, when there's somebody in front of you and it'll adapt to their speed or whatever, I despise. I cannot stand those. And here's why. Because I can be cruising at like 70 miles an hour and coming up on somebody, and instead of maintaining speed and getting close enough that I can, you know, move over and pass them, the truck will slow down to match their speed. And sometimes it's like only a few miles an hour slower, and you don't really realize it. You know, you're just all of a sudden just following them, and it might seem like they just sped up, you know. And anyway, that's not the big issue. The big issue is I've had quite a few times where the sensor was off, or like somebody was getting ready to go into the exit lane, the off ramp or something, and the truck sensed it, but they would still be in my lane just a tiny bit or right on the line, and I'm passing them. Well, the truck thinks I'm gonna hit them and slams on the brakes. And I hate that. I hate that. And it's one thing if I'm pushing on the brakes and I know I'm pushing on the brakes and stopping for something. There's been one time where it's slammed on the brakes so hard that it locked them up and was skidding down the road because, again, a car was merging off the freeway and going to the off-ramp, but there was a car broke down on the off-ramp, and so they stayed in my lane just a little bit to, you know, make some room around that car that was broke down, which was, you know, the right thing to do. And I was right behind them. Well, when they went into their lane, into the exit lane, and then came back to go around that car, the truck thought I was gonna hit them and slammed on the brakes hard, and about threw me through the windshield. I mean, and that was the key point. That was the tipping point where never again I want to drive it. One of those kind of trucks. Now, this truck, when I was having to drive it, I was up in Montana and I was on I-90. It was in the middle of the night. It was probably midnight, between midnight and 2 a.m., something like that. And a dog had come out onto the freeway. There's that part of the interstate. There's a lot of ranches and farms up there, and anyway, a dog came out onto the freeway, and by the time I seen him, I started to move over, you know, to the left, but I was pulling doubles, and so I couldn't swerve very hard, but I ended up hitting the poor thing, and it took out that sensor right on the front bumper that does that, you know, cruise control, adaptive, you know, mitigation BS. But so yeah, I was thinking when it took it out, when that broke, I was thinking that, you know, it would have to be replaced, because trucks nowadays, even cars and stuff, you know, they have one sensor go out, and it seems like it screws everything up a lot of the time. And I started driving it, and then I was thinking, well, maybe just the cruise control won't work, you know, it'll drive fine, which it did. It drove fine. I mean, I have let me show you. Okay, see that collision mitigation system? Now watch. As soon as it registers it, see, adaptive cruise fault. When that broke, it actually didn't break the sensor, it just broke the what do you call it, like the outer edge of it where it mounted to the bumper. So the actual sensor was still intact, but it got knocked inside of the bumper and was still hooked up. So I attempted to try the cruise, and it worked. Every once in a while it would go off thinking I was gonna hit something, you know, like saying I was getting too close to something, when it was actually detecting either the motor or the bumper underneath, because it was inside the bumper. And anyway, it only did it once in a while. So when I got back, I told them that the cruise control worked. It just sensed every once in a while that I was going to hit something. So we attempted to try to unplug it and see if it would still work. And it's still sitting right here. In fact, let me show you what I'm talking about. Whoa. Sorry about that. This right here. So see right here, these holes? Yeah, we just unplugged it, and like you saw on the dash, it just comes up as a fault. But The cruise control works still just fine. I still have the little beeps, when I start to go across the lane without my turn signal on, or start to hug a line. The side ones still work just fine and go off, but that, adaptive cruise control one, right there's the sensor for it, and it has made this truck much better to drive. More, well, let's say it's made it a lot enjoyable for me to drive, except for number 3. We're going to talk about number 3. And that has to do with the RPMs. Now, in your lower gears, it's a 10-speed. And in your lower gears, it's not so noticeable, and it doesn't really affect it because you rev up to 14 or 15 and you can shift right away and catch the next gear and get up to speed. But it's in your higher range, especially 9th and 10th, I think. Well, 9th and 10th for sure, but I think it was 7th and 8th. Maybe. There's, I think, 2 gears. For sure 9 and 10. That's mostly the one I noticed, because when you're pulling hills, most of the time I just got to shift to 9th. And that's it. Unless it's a good size hill and I'm heavy. But I think there was another one, but anyway. Let's say I'm pulling a hill and in 10th gear, my RPMs are starting to drop. All of a sudden I'll shift into 9th gear to make the climb, and there's nothing on the pedal. Absolutely nothing. Now, let me say one thing real quick. It only happens sometimes. If it happened every time, I would say it's like some kind of governor on the RPMs or something, and maybe it still is, maybe it just, I don't know, but I'll shift from 10th to 9th and there's nothing until the RPMs drop to, I think it's about 1300 RPMs, between 12 and 13, I think. And then it will finally engage or grab and start putting power to the wheels, and then start climbing. The RPMs will start climbing again. We had this company I worked for, we had a day cab that had a PACCAR engine. This one's got a Cummins. It had a PACCAR engine in it, and it would do it with almost every gear. And to make it worse, we were pulling doubles, heavy doubles. We were hauling trash out to a landfill, and so we was pulling like 40 tons. Sometimes just a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit above, but it was averaging around 40 tons. And it was also a 10-speed. And so anybody knows, when you're pulling that much weight, when you're pulling a lot of weight, and you're like just going up a little hill or on the on-ramp, you have to get your RPMs up for the shift, because for one thing, you're pulling uphill and it's gonna hurry and slow you down. So if you're able to get your RPMs up to at least 17 or 18, by the time you shift and stuff, it'll drop down to about 13 ish. And that's a good place to be for the next gear to, slowly start climbing again. If you can't, and you drop sometimes, between 12 and 13, it'll do it, but it'll take a lot longer. But if it happens to drop any lower, then it's just too much weight for that high gear, and you have to go back to the next lower gear. And so many times I've had to do that. Because again, it would only climb to like 1500 or 1600 or something. I think it was actually even lower than this one. I think this one will max out just below 16. And I think that one was just below 15 or something, or right on 15. So it made it worse. And what I would end up having to do when I drove that truck is just stay in the lower gear until I climbed the on-ramp or hill or whatever I'm doing, and just back off the throttle a little bit and just climb it a lot slower than the truck would have done, had it not had that. And yes, it worked and you could do it, but again, that was a lot harder and on the truck, and it took a lot longer to get from point A to point B because of that one issue. This one's got it too, but luckily it's an OTR truck, so luckily, the most you're gonna haul is usually around 40 to 43 K, and so it's not quite as bad. Like I said, most of the time I only have to shift from 10th to 9th, and when I'm pulling hills, every once in a while, like going up over Cabbage or something, you'd have to shift down to 8th or even 7th once in a while. But yeah, so those are the three things that just totally do it for me on this truck. I mean, those three things weren't there. It's like I said, it's got the Cummins, it's got a powerful engine. I mean, you can feel that it's got power, and I love that it's got a manual. I mean, I'm an old school driver. I've been driving a long time, and I'm just more comfortable. I'm more, what's the word? I'm just more at peace. I don't know. It's just, I've always drove, I can't say that. I haven't always drove manuals, but for my first let's say close to 10 years is all been manual. You know, I've drove 9-speed, 10-speed, 13-speed, 15-speed, 18-speed, and I think I prefer the 13 speeds. I think over all of them, either 18 or 13. Truck, which is nice. And old Pete that's getting tires, it's got the bed that kind of comes out and then up a little bit, and then you can either fold it down and make it a full bunk up there, but it, just the end of it lifts up. And I've got, you know, that's my storage place now. I got a bunch of stuff up there, but anyway, this one's already got, you know, drawers and stuff to put your clothes, cupboards. I don't know, this is a really nice truck. It's just those three things that I would definitely have different if I was looking for a truck to buy anyway, which someday I plan to again. Not do the lease thing. No, that I think I learned my lesson on that, but I still want to try to buy a truck. And but anyway, the automatic and manual is not a bust for me. You know, it can be either way, but I prefer a manual if I have to have, if I'm buying a truck and you know it's a good deal or whatever, and I'll buy an automatic or whatever. But it will not under any circumstances have any of these, you know, cruise sensors. That just totally did it for me. And not only that, they just give me a headache because they're going off all the time. And somebody that's been driving 24 years, you'd think I would know. And not to brag or anything, it's just knock on wood the way it is. I haven't caused an accident in all that time. I haven't caused an accident since I've been driving behind the wheel. So anyway, that's besides the point. What I'm saying is I've been driving long enough and not caused an accident that I feel like I don't need a truck to tell me if I'm too close or if I'm gonna hit something, or if, you know, I'm out of my lane, or and maybe it's just the old stubborn in me because I'm old. I don't know, but and eventually by the time I get ready to buy a truck, maybe that's all there's left, you know, is trucks with got these sensors and stuff, you know, basically driving it for you. And if it comes to that where the truck's just gonna drive itself, then I don't want no part in it, you know. I'll go find something else to do. But as long as they have a truck that I can drive and control, you know, I like to feel in control. That's why I think I prefer a manual, is because I feel in control with the manual. And yes, you can argue with me that you can put an automatic into the manual setting and it'll hold the gear, but there's no guarantees on that. There's no guarantees that I'll catch my gear on a hill or something or whatever, and then before I know it, I'm a runaway truck. But anybody that's been driving long enough knows that if you're coming up to a steep grade, you get into the gear you want before you start descending. And that saves you from having to even pull it out of gear on a hill at all. So I'll be glad when we go back to the yard and can park this one and get what few things I just threw in here and back into my other truck. And then it's funny because every OTR job I've ever had, it's not been a lot, but you know, let's see, probably a small handful. I'll say about 4 or 5 over the road jobs, and then this one. But every other one I've had, we've always taken the trucks home. You know, even if it's just overnight or it's our 36-hour reset, you know, we just park the truck at home and then right from home start driving to our next destination or whatever. This company, they want you to take the trucks back to the yard all the time, which was fine, you know, I mean, I guess. But let's say if I was taking a vacation or more than 2 or 3 days off, of course I'd take the truck back and get it out of the way. But it is kind of a pain when when you're just going overnight and then you drive to the yard, get in your personal vehicle, go home, and then wake up the next morning, whatever time, drive back to the yard, and then start the truck and let it warm up and air up, and then drive to your destination. There's just a lot of extra steps that, you know, could be avoided, but it's fine. I've even had a couple local jobs, you know, that I would park the truck at my house. I had a dump truck job. I parked the dump truck and pup right at my house too every day, and I'd just walk out, do my pre-trip right there, and then take off. So it is a little weird, but yeah, like I said, if it was just overnight or a couple nights, I'd kind of wish they would let us just take them home, but and when they need to be serviced, you know, of course we'd take them back to the shop and ride them up or whatever. But anyway, well, that's all I got for today. So have a great day, YouTube. We'll catch you on the next one.